Hey everybody, thanks for watching my channel today. My name's Don, and today I want to talk about my last ice fishing trip. It almost seems appropriate because here I am sitting in South Central Florida today. I think it's the 31st of January, and they're saying the temperature tonight is going to get down to 24 degrees. So as you can see, I've got my long sleeve shirts on and getting prepared for it. But 24 degrees is nothing if you're an ice fisherman. And back when I was in Ohio, I was definitely an ice fisherman. You know, it was a funny thing because we couldn't wait for the ice out so that we could start fishing in early spring. And we would literally fish up until the ice covered the lakes. Um, but it got a little dicey come September because September was also the start of hunting season. So a lot of us were deer hunters, and we had to kind of split our time between deer hunting and the final days of fishing. But the one thing we look forward to, and I mean we really look forward to, was ice fishing. Some years were better than others. Some years, we'd actually be able to go ice fishing during our Christmas break from school, and that was always a big deal. If there was enough ice, we had a couple of weeks, we could literally go ice fishing every day. And we did. We spent a lot of time on the ice. My father was an avid uh, ice fisherman. He used to go fishing all the time, every day, and he he uh, he was really a good ice fisherman. He knew a lot of things about ice fishing that he taught me, but I I've got a really dry mouth today, so it's a little hard to talk. So, uh, my father and I used to go quite a bit together. We used to fish uh, a lake called Mogador Reservoir, and it was a great bluegill lake. Well, it was a great bass lake. And back then, I mean, there were a lot of guys that ice fished, and it wasn't unusual to go out and maybe catch 25 or 30 bluegill in 3 or 4 hours. But what made it special was he actually built an ice fishing box. Now, a lot of guys used ice fishing shanties, little houses where they could have some heat, get out of the elements. But my dad never liked that. He always wanted to be outside. He wanted to be able to see what was going on. He didn't mind the weather. And he built a box, and it wasn't anything really special, but it was set up in such a way that he could carry his ice fishing rods, he could carry his lantern, a thermos of coffee, anything else that he might want to take along, and it worked really well. The way it was constructed, it was kind of a box on runners like a sled, but the front of it, you would sit on it, kind of straddle it, but the front was higher than the part that you sat on, and it had a little lid that would flip open. Um, the reason it was higher was it was built to accommodate a Coleman lantern, and back in those days, we used Coleman lanterns with Coleman fuel, and they had little lantern, lights, little mantles that would come on, and it would get pretty hot. It would throw off a lot of heat, but it would throw off a lot of light as well. In the front of the box, he'd have a little window cut out so that the light would shine out to where the holes were that you were fishing. And what was cool about it was he would get a small piece of aluminum, metal of some kind, and he would make like a square that had a little hole in the middle, and he could then put that on top of the lantern, and it would get hot. It would get almost red hot, and so he would always take one sandwich, and it would be a cheese sandwich, and it was easy to make. I used to make them all the time before we go fishing because all you would do is butter the bread on the outside, and then put a couple pieces of cheese in the middle, wrap it up in aluminum foil. And when we'd get out on the water, you would lay that on top of the lantern, on top of this square piece of metal. And I'm telling you what, within about 15 minutes, you would smell that hot, you know, cheese sandwich. And I mean, you couldn't wait to eat it. And it was something special. It really made the fishing trip a lot of fun. But we used to go fishing all the time, and we catch a lot of bluegills. Occasionally, you'd catch a bass. Catching a bass through the ice was just literally a matter of just lifting them up because they were just. It was like they were frozen. There wasn't hardly any fight. The same with walleyes. We used to do some walleye fishing for ice fishing for walleyes through the ice, and we catch a lot of them, but there wasn't a lot of fight. You just kind of lift them out of the water. But I mean, I can remember going out and we'd fish in blizzards. We'd fish in the most horrible weather you could imagine. Uh, years after my father passed away, and I used to go out by myself. I built my first ice shanty, and then later I realized I could buy one cheaper than I could build it, and uh, and I had a collapsible ice shanty, and it was great. I mean, I'd go out with a buddy of mine, and we'd stop by and get a couple of sub sandwiches and a thermos full of coffee, and we'd head out to the lake. And the ice shanty was actually built on a couple of runners, so you could pull it right across the ice. It wasn't hard to pull. And once you got out there, it only took you minutes to get it set up, drill a couple of holes, and it didn't matter how bad the weather was. I mean, as bad as it might be, if you're sitting inside of a shanty, you'd literally take your jacket off. That's Lily. Get out of here, Lily. But you'd literally take your jacket off and take your gloves off because it was like springtime in there. I mean, the weather would be so nice, and you'd look out the little plastic windows. It'd be storming. It'd be blowing 20 below, and here you are, nice and comfy. But like I say, most of my trips growing up, when I was really just a young kid, we were exposed to the elements. We would sit out there and on the ice, and you had to really dress warm. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But I mentioned at the beginning that this video is about my last ice fishing trip, uh, and it's really not my last ice fishing trip. It was really my last ice fishing trip with my dad. My dad died he was 53 or 54, I'm not sure. Um, Strong as an ox. He was one of these guys that never got sick, never took a day off from work. I uh, I was always envious of his strength and his ability to just withstand everything. And I'm sure he had medical issues and problems, but you'd never know it because he never talked about them. He'd get up and go to work no matter how he felt. I know there were times that he had the flu or he had a cold, and he'd still get up and he'd still go fishing, and he'd still go to work. So he was a tough guy, and he was from a generation of men that's what they did. Um, so so he and I used to go fishing all the time, and he was a great guy to go fishing with because he wasn't a big talker. He was easy to fish with. You didn't have to worry about carrying a conversation on because he was all about fishing. He was concentrating on that. But the last couple of years of his life were pretty tough because he had cancer, and the first go round they literally gutted him. I mean, they removed so much. He went from about 260 pounds down to 140 pounds, and he looked like a human skeleton. Uh, no one thought he would ever recover. And at that time, he was in his early 50s, and he had been a tire builder at BF Goodrich, and he built airplane tires. I worked there too when I was right out of high school. And I can tell you, you had to weigh 225 pounds to work on what they called the fourth floor, where they built these big ass, airplane tires. And the reason was you had to spear the treads on. And if you didn't weigh at least 250 pounds, that spear gets caught, it would just pick you up and throw you across the room. So you had to be a pretty good sized man to be able to do it. And he had done that for years and years. And after he got sick, after he had his surgery, everybody expected him to retire, even though he was only in his early 50s. Uh, no one dreamt, including his doctors, no one dreamt he'd ever go back to work. But he did. He actually went back to work about a year later. He actually had a colostomy bag and an ileostomy bag, one for both things, and it was a real process for him really to do anything. But he regained his health. He got back to about 240, and he went back to work. And we got back to fishing. We were going fishing just as often as we used to. And I remember the very last ice fishing trip the two of us were on. We were just sitting there catching some fish, and I looked over, and he seemed to be a little bent over, and next thing I knew, he was throwing up. And I asked him, I said, "You okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And a few minutes later, he threw up again. I'm like, "Dan, are you sure? You sure you want to go?" No, I'm okay. And about 20 minutes later, he threw up a third time, and this time there was blood in the vomit, and I knew that the cancer was back. That was the last time we went ice fishing, and he died about maybe 6 months later. But it was a horrible way for him to go. But I wanted to do a video on this, to both talk about what he went through, what I went through, fishing with him those last couple of times. But just to kind of remind you and remind anybody that's watching this video, we never know when that last trip's going to be. We never know when that last trip's going to be with our father, with our brother, whoever it might be. And we never know if it'll be our last trip. But enjoy yourselves while you're out there fishing, because it's a great sport. It's a sport that you can become very passionate about, and every day is a gift from God. So enjoy yourselves out there. Appreciate the fact you're still able to get out there and go fishing, and take advantage of the people around you that mean a lot to you, and get them out there in a boat with you. You'll be glad you did. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching the video. If you would, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you have one. But it's going to be a cold night tonight, but I don't think I'll be ice fishing. Thanks again.